Oversight and Government Reform Subcommittee on Government Operations. Please silence your phones.
Good morning, and I'd like to welcome you to the Subcommittee on Government Operations hearing this morning. We're pleased to be in Bakersville, North Carolina, and the topic of today's subcommittee hearing is building a better partnership, exploring the Mine Safety and Health Administration's regulation of Southern Appalachia mining. I'm Congressman John Micah, privileged to chair the Government Operations Subcommittee of the United States House of Representatives full Committee on Government Oversight and Reform. I'm joined today by actually the Vice Chairman of our panel, and we are an investigative body of Congress, the Chief Investigative Panel of the House of Representatives, the Oversight and Reform Committee, and our specific Subcommittee Government Operations has very broad jurisdiction to investigate various waste, fraud, abuse, and programs of the federal government. The Vice Chair of that Subcommittee, as I said, is a congressman from this district in North Carolina, Honorable Mark Meadows, and we would not be here if it wasn't for his request. Each of the subcommittee members do get the opportunity to choose the topics and assist in looking at various areas that need review by the panel. And Congressman Meadows requested that we conduct this hearing and this review of mine safety, which is particularly important, as you know, to this district, to this state, and also to the country. So we're pleased to be here at his request, and also have him as a member and now a leader of the committee. That's pretty good too, considering I think this is his first term to be the vice chair of the subcommittee in Congress. So thank you for your invitation, and also report back to his citizens being the most senior member of the panel. You wake up one day and you find out that everybody to you is junior, but after 21 years on this committee, I've seen many members, and very pleased at the quality of the representative and the participation, full participation and commitment he has provided to our committee. So thank him again for his work and his leadership role. The order of business of the first I'll introduce actually quite a historic gathering. I can't remember a field hearing where we had 4 members from 4 different states, from Florida, of course here, North Carolina. We're also honored to have with us a very distinguished member from Tennessee right across the way, Dr. Phil Brown. Have had the opportunity to work with him. He is a member of the Education Workforce Committee and also the Veterans Affairs Committee. And he serves on one of the Oversight Investigations panel. That and chairs the Subcommittee on Health, Employment, Labor, and Pensions. So quite fitting that we're joined by a nearby colleague, Mr. Meadows, in this district. So we welcome Dr. Grove, Congressman Grove, Tennessee's 1st district. And then again, in somewhat of a historic vein, joined by Virginia Congressman Morgan Griffith. He's a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee and subcommittees of Health, Energy, Power, and also part of an Oversight and Investigations panel in that particular subcommittee. So I want to welcome both Representative Griffith, Representative Rowe, panel. I ask unanimous consent that both be allowed to participate in this subcommittee hearing without objection, so ordered. So we will, the order of presentation and business this morning will be opening statements by members. And I'll begin that process, then I'll yield to the Vice Chair, Congressman Meadows, Mr. Rowe, and then Mr. Griffin. And then we have two panels, I believe, this morning. First, we're going to hear from the panel that's assembled, and then we have another panel consisting of one witness. So that will be the order of the business today. And with that, I will begin by a few opening remarks. Again, I give Mr. Meadows for your leadership in having us in your district and this beautiful area of North Carolina and also the United States. My family and I have had an opportunity over the years to visit Mitchell County. I spent a lot of time over in Spruce Pine. I miss a place called Dom's. I think they used to have a double cheeseburger. Some of the older folks remember that. I think that was one of the great losses, well, not lost. Also, I think Mr. McHenry had that area first, and I think I practically had tears in my eyes. Mighty told me that the Spruce Pine, the core of it, some of it burnt down some years ago. But it is a great area, and I'm pleased to be here in the county seat. So, the purpose of our committee, again, and I'll touch briefly in my opening, some introductory remarks, is the chief investigative panel of the House of Representatives. And the history of this committee, Government Oversight and Reform, I think you've probably seen, at least Mr. Meadows and myself, with most recently we've been kind of jammed on scandals in Washington. I'm trying to remember where we left off, Mark, but we started on Benghazi and then we got shifted to IRS, and we've had, it looks like we got NSA around the corner. But this panel is very important. The founding fathers were always skeptical of government having come from colonial status where the Parliament and the King imposed a lot of restrictions on their life and freedom and their rights. In fact, it's kind of interesting if you look at the Declaration of Independence. You find, of course, they're declaring at the very beginning their independence from England and the Parliament, the King. But then most of the Declaration is citing the abuses of the British government, the King, and the Parliament. It's kind of funny if you read through some of them. It's almost like why we're here today. One of my favorites is he sent out his agents among us to harass and give, at that time, colonists a rough time with bureaucracy and government. And from that time forward, I think that both the evolution of our government and our agencies has been to try to keep government under control and sort of at bay. People that have always sought freedom and independence and supported enterprise and production of individuals. But that's part of the history of this panel was they started Congress and had authorizers and appropriators, someone who created the programs. Start with the Constitution and the Congress, and we create the programs and through authorizing committees, and then we also fund them through appropriating committees. Well, the founding fathers, way back as early as the beginning of creating any of these government agencies, never really trusted authorizers and appropriators in created the predecessor of our committee, which is Government Oversight and Reform. And they wanted to check to see how the programs were working, how the money was spent, and did it meet the intent of Congress. So that briefly is the background of how our committee evolved to today and the reason we're here. So when you're trying to raise your family, make a living, and survive all the various activities that government at various levels imposes on you, our job is to represent you and again make certain that we get it right. So with that background on the committee, today's topic again is mine safety, and it's incredibly important to the economy of this community and this state, as I said. And that's why Mr. Meadows brought us here. It's just driving through here from Spruce Pine, if you can't see the importance of mining to this region, you must have your blinders on or your shades down. But this is a very active mining area for the state. And it's important, I think, that we strike a balance between promoting safety, which everyone is encouraged to make certain we get right, but also the balance in being able to conduct commerce and do both in a positive fashion. So today we're going to hear from three metal and non-metal mining operators in North Carolina, and they're going to tell us some of their stories about the way our federal mine safety and health administration has impacted their business. And then we will hear again about some of the problems relating to enforcement practices and other issues that have proven difficult sometimes for them to conduct their business and industry under. Our mine safety agency is an important agency and has an important goal in ensuring that mines and miners are safe, and again, that people are secure in both in their employment and safety. However, mine safety agency, like many federal agencies, is a powerful government agency. They have the responsibility to conduct inspection of every metal and non-metal mine 2 times a year. And during these inspections, agents can write citations for violations, as we've heard, and they can also impose penalties on the mine operators. We should note that this federal agency can enter mine property at any time the agency feels it should under the law, so it has a lot of discretion in entering and monitoring the activities and businesses of mining. And of course, there will always be a friction between the regulators and the folks that they regulate. What we try to do is sort it out again and achieve some balance. However, it should be the goal of the federal agency, such as, again, our mine safety agency, to partner with the regulated community to work to achieve a common goal of providing a safe workplace and environment, and also thriving mining industry. Once you close the mines down and people aren't working, you don't have to worry about regulating the industry or people working. And over the past 8 years, has been a change in the philosophy of the Mine Safety Agency, and we want to examine again what's taking place and see if fairness prevails for all parties concerned. Since 2005, the total citations that have increase them 550%. And that is something also we want to look at today. We believe that also that some of the folks that have received these fines may have done so in an inordinate amount of fines, and also, again, we heard the significant increase in the mines. So, I think that's something else we need to review in this hearing today, and see if we have gotten out of balance in the whole process. Moreover, I've called this hearing to allow operators from North Carolina to tell Congress and their representatives how they feel the Mine Safety Agency has operated. Ask them and hear from them about how they feel it has worked within the authority granted by Congress. And again, see what makes sense and how we can both be responsible for safety, but also have the balance that allows us to continue to have this industry thrive and the business succeed. So I want to thank the witnesses for being with us today. Look forward to hearing from their testimony. I'm particularly grateful we have two other states that represented and representatives of two nearby districts joining us. And now what I'll do is yield to our Vice Chair. Thank him again for his leadership. He's a special kind of guy and has a business background like myself. And I think he gets it. And he also have to say he got us here this morning in Mitchell County, and we're delighted to be here. So I yield to the gentleman from North Carolina, Vice Chair, Mr. Meadows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you've got to be coming here to get here, and so it's a real encouragement just to see your involvement. And I want to start off first by saying thank you for being here, truly for showing up and on this important issue. Thank the witnesses for coming today and being willing to testify and take time out. Mining is a critical part of North Carolina's economic engine. We have over 800 mining permits throughout the state, covering over 100,000 acres. If you look at it, it brings in directly $1 billion in revenue. And if you take that out in terms of some of the total economy, the effect of mining is somewhere around $3.5 billion. It accounts for over 10,000 jobs directly, and those indirect implications that we know, obviously here in Mitchell County, but throughout the district, some 27,150 indirect jobs as part of the mining industry. So. And these are not low-paying jobs. The average salary in the mining industry is right at $50,000. So these are good-paying jobs that are good for the economy. But I want to also talk about the importance of mining just a little bit, because some of the people may not know how critical it is. Crushed stone, obviously, is one of our major raw materials that we look at. But that's not the only thing that we mine. 90% of the world's high-quality quartz comes from western North Carolina. In addition to that, some 60% of the United States feldspar comes from North Carolina as well. And in addition to that, don't want to leave out some of the clay and other bricks used. We get an unbelievable amount of resources that come from western North Carolina. So the aggregates industry plays a huge role in our economy. Sand and gravel, as we start to look at it, we've got people here that will be testifying to that point, but in the construction of highways and roads, not only in North Carolina, but across America. And as a former developer, I know firsthand how critical that is to have the access to that. One of our people here, we've used their product here, Mr. McNeely, as he testifies. He had a quarry very close to some property that I own. And so, but since coming to Washington, I've heard from not only many mine operators that are experiencing problems, but before I got there, I had story after story that said, you know, you really need to look into that. And so we want to make sure that we provide a safe working environment. This is not about doing something in an unsafe manner, but we also need to make sure that regulations don't overburden what we have. MSHA has an important job of keeping our miners safe, but what I've been hearing, and we look forward to hearing testimony today, is really kind of a direction that has changed from training to more of an enforcement. We've called this hearing today, Mr. Chairman, both to hear directly from the North Carolina mine operators and with the impact of MSHA on their businesses, so that they can tell their stories, the frustrations they have dealing with federal agencies and whose philosophy seems to sort that out. But we're not asking necessarily MSHA to relax their standards as much as they are as providing a consistent standard for safety. Something that we can hear as we were looking at things, it's knowing that standard and knowing that that standard is fair and how we are able to deal with that in this, and then it doesn't hurt jobs ultimately, because that's what it's all about. We're pleased today to have representatives from MSHA here that we look forward to hearing your testimony as well in terms of maintaining safety. But at this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Chairman Micah for calling this hearing and coming to my district. At the beginning of Congress, I told the chairman how important this issue was to my people back home. And in an environment where a lot of times people don't listen, the chairman said, well, if it's that important, we need to have a hearing and shed some light on some of that. And so he's here today to do that. So I wanted to thank the chairman. I also want to personally thank Chairman Congressman Rowe from Tennessee. He's been a good friend early on. He understands these issues. I'm humbled by this because I'm on a panel today with 3 chairmen of subcommittees, and so to have this kind of historic, I think the chairman mentioned it's a historic day, to have 4 members of Congress from 4 different states, but to have 3 chairmen on a subcommittee hearing is just shows how important it is. So I'd like to thank him as well. And Congressman Griffith from Virginia knows mining well. We talked on the House floor just the other day with some of the issues that he deals with in Virginia, and so having reasonable MSHA regulations are critical. I'd like to ask the chairman to just highlight 3 individual records and ask unanimous consent to have them for the record, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. One of them is from the Commissioner of Labor, Sherry Berry, who is very concerned that we've gone to an enforcement mechanism from a training. She has her head of mining and safety, William Geringer, here today. I thank him for coming, and so I'd ask Mr. Chairman if we could submit this record, this letter for the record. In addition to that, I have a letter from Congresswoman Virginia Fox, who knows this area well, is from Avery County originally. She serves in Watauga and in Congress, hitting Watauga and going over. She is also on the subcommittee that actually has the legislative jurisdiction along with Congressman Rowe over this particular area, and she has expressed a real concern that we have gone from a safety training environment to an enforcement environment, and has sent a letter in support of this hearing as well. And then finally, we have a letter from the chairman of the board of directors of the National Stone Sand and Gravel Association, which highlights some of the issues that they're dealing with as an association and some of these. And Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you would consider these for the record.
Without objection, both the statements of the North Carolina Secretary of Labor, Representative Fox, and Howard Nye, is it named?
Yes. Yes, sir.
All be included as part of the record. Without objection, so ordered.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Well, thank you again. And Mr. Meadows, let me ask you, if you would, as a courtesy, before I go to the other members, I had an opportunity to meet the mayor, I think, and sheriff. So, is the mayor here? Would you like to introduce your mayor? And I thank him also. I love history, and to be in the 1907, I think it is, a restored courthouse. It's quite a treat to be here and to see the great work they've done in restoring this historic building. But would you like to introduce?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A special thank you to our mayor that has done such a great job. You know, when we talk about North Carolina, we talk about real hospitality, and so our mayor has done that, and I just applaud him. And our sheriff is thank you for the security, but thank both of you for
again, Representative Meadows. Will now yield to Dr. Rowe. You're recognized. Welcome.
I thank the chairman for the opportunity to speak, and I also want to brag on Chairman Micah. He, I guess 3 years ago, came over to my district, and we had some transportation issues. At that time, he chaired the Transportation Infrastructure, a huge committee on Capitol Hill. And Chairman, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And
He is great too to help. We worked on the transportation bill, which was not easy. I described it one time as trying to give birth to a porcupine. And if you think it's easy, you should have been with the four of us yesterday on the floor of the House debate at the Farm Bill. That was not a successful delivery. Thank you again for all of your help in coming to this hearing. And again, it's rare that you get, as Representative Meadows said, people with concurrent responsibility and then districts and interests that all mesh and bring them together for a field hearing like this. So thank you.
Well, I want to thank the crowd for being here today. This is what democracy is all about, to bring the government to the people. And I had the panel thank you, and I want to thank you because when we hold hearings in Washington, we have people who are really professional testifiers. And all of their testimony is very slick and so forth, and you all got right straight to the point. And where a country boy like me would understand. And I appreciate that very much. And I also want to thank Mark and Morgan Griffin. We have become fast and furious friends. You have elected a great representative in Mark Meadows. I certainly know this district very well in North Carolina because all of my district parallels North Carolina from Mountain City all the way to Gatlinburg. So I'm over here all the time, and you probably won't recognize me. I'll either have a golf club in my hand or I'll have hiking shorts on. So I'm over here to have fun when I come to North Carolina. I want to introduce a very good friend of mine that I've known for 25 years, Bill Slagle, sitting right back there. Bill called on me in my medical practice for 25 years, and I appreciate your friendship. And one of the things that made it a lot easier for me to get elected to Congress, these three gentlemen, was that I delivered my own voter, so it helped a lot. It worked out pretty well. The reason I enjoy these hearings, and Mr. Chairman, the reason that I will jump at the chance to come, I've held numerous hearings outside of Washington. And this is where you really found out, but I can assure you, inside 395, something's wrong with oxygen. I can tell you, it doesn't work right. Out here, you can actually find out what's going on with real people and real jobs, and about how these mandates, and Mayor, I want to tell you and the Sheriff, if I possibly can, I was the mayor of Johnson City before I went to Congress. That was my political job. Never served any other political job. I will never vote for an unfunded mandate in local government if I know I'm doing it. Now, these 1,000-page bills, sometimes I might get fooled, but I had enough of them dropped on me to understand what you're dealing with here on the local level. So I want to thank you for the work the local people do. The best government in the world is local government. And that's one of the reasons that we're here today, is to bring the federal government to the local level. And we're going to learn a lot today, a lot more than I would learn in an hour or so that I would spend in Washington. And another reason I'm here, Mark invited me in any way that I can do to support him. But secondly, the MSHA comes under my committee of education and workforce, which is why I'm here. With that, I yield back to you, Chairman.
Thank you again for being with us. Now the gentleman from Virginia's 9th District, Congressman Rippeth. Welcome, and you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I do appreciate you doing this. These field hearings are so important. As Congressman Rose said, he came to one that we had last year in my district. This is a way, a lot of folks can't make it to D.C. and get their opinions heard. This is a way that they not only get their opinions heard by some congressmen, but also all of this goes into the official record. And so it's good to get it on the record and how people feel. And I do appreciate you taking the time to be here. Mr. Chairman, you come from the farthest away of any of us. I will tell you that, as Congressman Meadows said, sometimes you have to be, or maybe it was you, Chairman, said you have to be coming here to get here. I know that feeling because if you look at the map and you go as a crow flies from my house down here, it's a pretty straight line. In fact, 221 goes through my district, which gets right close to here. But that's not the way you get here. I came through Phil's district. I circled down 81 and circled back through Tennessee to get here because it was, when you have a mountain district, you understand these things. That's how you get here. It's like trying to get to about a third of my district landmass. I go through Phil's district. I drop down and go around the mountain because you can go through the mountains. It's just going to take you an extra 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm glad to be with you all today. So glad to be here. My district it comprises a lot of mining operations. Most of it's coal, but we also have a significant amount of aggregates mined in my district of Southwest Virginia. And so it's very important. And when I saw that there was this opportunity to come here and learn a little bit about what's going on with MSHA, because my folks are always talking about MSHA, but I serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee, so most of my time has been spent defending the rights of citizens to have affordable energy, aka coal, and to use that. But I also hear complaints on a regular basis about MSHA, so I'm glad that I'm able here to share that. I will say, though, Dr. Rowe got the Congress a lot easier than I did, because when you deliver your clients or your voters, as your clients are your voters, and you deliver them, that's a good thing. I was a criminal defense attorney. So about half of my clients couldn't vote anymore. But I am glad to be with you. And as Chairman Micah said, I serve on the Oversight Subcommittee of Energy and Commerce. And sometimes it gets confusing because your committee, as you know, Representative Meadows and Chairman Micah, y'all have a big oversight committee. Then each one of the other standing committees in Congress has an oversight committee that oversees, particular matters under their jurisdiction. So I'm glad to be sitting with the folks who sit on the big oversight committee. They've been getting all the action lately. I'm a little jealous. But do look forward to today's hearing and finding out. I know that we're not dealing with MSHA from the coal side, but from the other side of the split in MSHA safety. But a lot of the issues are overlapping. I'm just glad to have been invited to be with you, and thank you for doing the good work that you all are doing. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And let me say at this point, since we've heard from the members with their opening statements, that all members may have 7 days to submit opening statements for the record without objection. So ordered, and we will now turn to our patiently waiting first panel of witnesses, and I'll introduce them. Again, Mr. Jeff Stoll is the Safety and Health Manager at the Quartz Corporation. Mr. Mac McNeely is Vice President of LBM Industries, and Mr. Sam Bratton is the President of the North Carolina Aggregates Association. Gentlemen, let me just tell you a couple of the ground rules. First up, this is an investigative panel. In a minute, you will be sworn in. You will be given, we'll be pretty liberal with the clock today, but if you get too lengthy, we'll terminate your oratory. And you can ask through the chair to submit additional information, data, anything you'd like to be part of the record. So you have that ability to do that, even though you may have limited time to address the panel today. So with those basic ground rules, if you'll stand, please. Raise your right
solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to present to this subcommittee of Congress is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Let the record reflect that the three witnesses all answered in the affirmative. And I think I'm going to start today with Mr. Bratton, since you represent the North Carolina Aggregates Association. Mr. Sam Bratton, we'll start with you. So, welcome, sir. Thank you for being with us, and you are recognized to present your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Sam Bratton. I'm president of Wakestone Corporation and the North Carolina Aggregates Association. Wakestone Corporation is a 43-year-old family business with 5 crushed stone operations and 122 employees. As president of the North Carolina Aggregates Association, I represent an industry with over 135 crushed stone quarries and 500 sand and gravel pits. I'm here today to give voluntary testimony on behalf of the aggregates industry in North Carolina regarding the role the Mine Safety and Health Administration plays in regulating metal and non-metal mining in North Carolina. I've provided in my written testimony several copies of correspondence to and from MSHA, plus several examples of MSHA inspector overreach provided by association members. However, I do want to state for the record, some companies were not comfortable identifying themselves in their submission due to fear of retribution. The North Carolina Aggregates Association wants to ensure Congress and MSHA know our members are not against safety regulations. Safety is our #1 priority. But our industry's relationship with MSHA is strained. My last encounter with Mr. Lichtenfels best illustrates MSHA's perception of the mining industry. On November 30th, 2010, at a meeting between the North Carolina and South Carolina Aggregates Associations and MSHA, many members complained about MSHA requiring the chalking of loaded heavy equipment on a grade. These pieces of equipment are just too large in all practicality to chalk on a grade fully loaded. But an MSHA inspector had been instructing equipment operators to chalk loaded trucks on a grade in the quarry pit and then place the transmission in neutral and release the parking brake. The chocks consistently failed when tested in this manner. When it was explained to Mr. Lichtenfels that this practice was not only impractical, but also dangerous, he looked directly at me, and I quote, "You are still killing people, and so we are going to continue to do what we need to do." I admit that there was a time in the aggregate mining industry when safety was not our top priority. But in today's business environment, producers are much more sophisticated and focused on safety. Proof of this commitment is the 2011 metal-non-metal injury rate of 2.6 per 100 workers, which was lower than coal, construction, manufacturing, education, health, forestry, logging, state and local government, and many others, as well as MSHA itself, which has an injury rate of 5.7 per 100 workers, more than double the metal non-metal mining industry. I want to repeat, MSHA's injury rate is more than double the metal non-metal mining industry injury rate. I'd like to share with you an example of overreach. At Wakestone Corporation's Nash County Quarry, an inspector witnessed a customer truck driver climb on the side of his parked truck to check the truck bed. The driver was very careful and deliberate in performing this action, using 3 points of contact at all times. The inspector issued Wakestone an imminent danger order and substantial and significant citation with a high likelihood of permanent disability. When asked what should be done to prevent this circumstance from occurring again, the inspector told us that all customer activity outside of the truck cab must be done off quarry property. We explained it is much more dangerous for a driver to perform this action on the shoulder of a public roadway versus in a quarry, where an area is provided for trucks to pull over. The inspector stated he did not care what happened to the driver outside the quarry entrance. When we presented an MSHA video in our defense, which we possessed at the time of the citation, it was entitled Customer Delivery Truck Drivers Hazard Training. This is a slide from the video. The video clearly shows the exact same activity performed in a quarry in the same manner in order to demonstrate the proper way to climb a truck to check the load. After viewing the video, MSHA refused to vacate the citation in an imminent danger order, so we contested it. Unfortunately, we decided to settle the case after 2 years and 3 months and countless hours and dollars of resources. The decision to settle was based upon our concern that legal precedent could be set if the case went before the biased MSHA Commission. It is our belief that training is much more effective than enforcement, but MSHA continues to place much more emphasis on enforcement. However, Joe Main, Assistant Secretary of Labor for MSHA, said himself that training is a top priority for MSHA. But MSHA recently requested in their 2013 budget a $5 million reduction in funding for the state grants program, requesting the funds be shifted to enforcement. So from training to enforcement. The reduction of $5 million to be shared among 49 states does not appear significant. It's only $5 million shared. But it would devastate the North Carolina Department of Labor's Mine and Quarry Bureau Miner Safety Training Program. Our goal is a better relationship with MSHA. We desire consistency, transparency, cooperation, accountability, fair due process of contested citations, differentiation of surface aggregate production from underground mining and all coal mining, and performance-based enforcement, and more training dollars. We believe these goals can be achieved by the following recommendations. First, establish a 3-member committee to review contested citations with representatives from MSHA mining and MSHA trained attorneys. 2, develop a method of communicating all vacated citations to MSHA inspectors and mine operators. This is not done today. Conduct a process audit of MSHA procedures. Focus more resources on training. Establish a performance-based inspection process so those operations that need more enforcement get more enforcement, and those that don't do not. And more differentiation between coal mining and surface aggregate operations. I want to state, our industry needs MSHA. We need safety regulation, but we do not need it in the form it is administered today. I now ask all the people present that support this testimony through the North Carolina Aggregates Association, please stand. Mr. Chairman, committee members, we respectfully request the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform take action upon these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and let the record reflect that your members also stood a large number of them, and appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Also that they were with us today. We're going to hold questions till we've heard from all of the panelists. So I'm going to go to Mr. McNeely next. He's the Vice President of LBM Industries. Welcome, sir, and you're ready.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for holding this hearing and for this opportunity to testify before you. I appreciate your interest in our concerns with MSHA. I'm Mac McNeely, Vice President of LBM Industries in Sapphire, North Carolina. We have 3 operations that are under MSHA jurisdiction. We're proud of our contribution to the local community and our mining operations. We treat safety at our mines as a priority. We're a very small operation. We work hand in hand with our employees. And the last thing we would ever want is for someone to get hurt. We have a very good safety. I would also like to say that MSHA has an important role in mine safety. We support that role. Safety is paramount to us, and we do not mind following the rules. The biggest issue we have with MSHA is how unpredictable and inconsistent they are with their interpretations and enforcement. Let me give you a few examples. In 1998, we installed a new conveyor with guarding at one of our quarries. Before putting the conveyor in service, we had a courtesy inspection by MSHA to make sure it was in compliance. After more than 20 inspections, an inspector in 2010 cited us for inadequate guards on the conveyor. So we had to stop production for 24 hours while rebuilding the guards. We could have appealed the citations, but we couldn't resume production until we had new guards installed to satisfy the inspector. When ordering new conveyors from a manufacturer in Pennsylvania, they asked us to provide drawings showing where to locate the safety rails along the conveyor walkways. The conveyor company told us that every MSHA district interprets the safety railing standard differently, but there was no way they could install a rail that satisfied the inspectors of all the districts. We received a citation for the seatbelt on the Bobcat skid steer. See the slide, please. The edge of the loose end of the belt was a bit frayed. Even though the fray had no effect on safety, We received a citation rated S&S, high negligence, and likely to cause a fatality, with an $1,100 penalty. We negotiated it down, but it should not have been cited at all. It had nothing to do with safety. And my last example is one that is still on the field. In February 2010, an inspector gave us fair notice that a person on the deck of an excavator would need to have handrails for fall protection. Manufacturers build equipment according to international safety standards, but the standards accepted by the rest of the modern world are no longer good enough for industry. We contacted Caterpillar, but they do not supply such rails because their equipment, of course, was designed to meet international safety standards. And quote, MSHA has not provided clearly defined standards regarding adequate fall protection or safe access. We found an aftermarket supplier for guardrail kits and ordered one. We had a dozen machines that would need these kits, and MSHA's new initiative was going to cost us over $50,000. In June, before the guardrail kit had even arrived, MSHA issued a bulletin that said if the equipment meets industry standards, that would be deemed sufficient. In November, I attended a meeting where Assistant Secretary Joe Main was the keynote speaker. He also affirmed that if our equipment met industry standards, we were okay. So we thought that was pretty solid. We instructed our folks to use the access pass that the manufacturers had installed. During a 2011 inspection, the inspector asked to look at a parked excavator. Our superintendent climbed up the steps, stepped onto the deck, and grabbed the handholds, which is the way the manufacturer had designed access to the engine compartment. The inspector issued a citation and imminent danger order for not using fall protection. We explained the MSHA's policy to the inspector and that we had heard it straight from Joe Main. We got a special assessment penalty of $6,300. At the closeout meeting, the inspector said something quite telling. He told us, and I quote, "This is not about safety, it's about compliance." Well, I ask you, compliance with what? What more could we have done to comply? We know that similar citations have been vacated, but not ours. We've had other inspectors tell us that the citation should not have been issued. And I'd like to say that our last inspection, which was this week, the inspector said they were going again to start writing these same citations. I would imagine that as you evaluate my testimony today, it would be easy to believe that these issues are unusual, but they're not. Usually the people who testify before this committee are the ones with the biggest, strongest story to tell. But the strength of my testimony today has to be its commonness. Similar testimony can be repeated by practically every miner in the state. MSHA's focus needs to change from compliance back to safety. We need clarity and consistency with safety rules and a timely appeals process. We need your help in getting MSHA to do a better job. It would be wonderful to be able to view MSHA as a partner in safety instead of an adversary. Thank you again for your interest and our concerns at this opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Neely. We'll now turn to final witness on this panel, Mr. Jeff Stoll, and he's the Safety and Health Manager at Quartz Corporation. Welcome, and you're recognized.
Chairman Micah, members of the committee, subcommittee. First, let me thank the Government Operations Subcommittee and all others in this room for allowing me the privilege to speak. I believe that the very existence of this meeting underscores what this great country stands for: freedom and the right to express peaceful opinion or dissension to governmental authorities. Today I come before you to testify regarding the Mine Safety and Health Administration reform debate. Most of the mining community would agree that since the inception of the Mine Act, MSHA has certainly had an overall positive impact on miner safety. But they have since become out of balance under their current leadership by emphasizing a punitive approach instead of training and education. We in Western North Carolina believe that these policies have created an undue economic hardship on responsible operators and do very little to improve miner safety. This is our petition to the committee and MSHA. Update the 1977 Mine Act to reflect safety modernizations and technological advancements made in the past 36 years. Quite frankly, the Mine Act is very archaic as it is currently written. Number 2, MSHA's discrimination and enforcement push needs to be reviewed from the standpoint of hindering legitimate company applications of disciplinary actions on employees. As these gentlemen indicated, accountability is a critical component of having a sound safety program. Number 3, the arbitrary and capricious citational inspection system lacks due process application and contains a triple penalty: economic burden. We have to terminate citations at the behest of the inspectors. The fines that are consequently negotiated and are paid by the operators. And then we have legal fees on top of that if we disagree how these citations have been written. So I call that kind of a triple penalty economic burden on the operators. Reconfigure the 800 number hazard complaint calling system to ensure frivolous calls are not being made, creating confusion, mistrust, and resource drains for MSHA and industry. Number 5, fines and penalties, or at least a percentage thereof, should be placed in a safety escrow account, essentially a beneficial safety project grant program managed by MSHA's Small Mines Office. Number 6, MSHA's push to cut state grant program monies and funding for training and education is a step in the wrong direction for safety. More state resources should be utilized, minimizing the growth of MSHA's bureaucracy. Number 7, MSHA should exercise impartiality on fatal investigation root cause evaluations, eliminating automatic blame on mine management. Number 8, MSHA's secretive approach on inspector notes and the extent and hurdles for industry to obtain them, i.e. by the Freedom of Information Act, is not furthering safety improvement by preventing trust and transparency development between them, the regulator, and the mining community. Those notes should be made available immediately. It's about safety. Number 9, if MSHA's ARs are going to make critical and many times very costly engineering calls on mine operators, then they need to obtain the proper credentials and credibility to do so. As a matter of appearance and credibility, MSHA should investigate why their own internal injury rates are so high, since, as we understand it, the universal or bottom line goal of any safety regulator or company safety program, what we all work for, is injury reduction or prevention. Number 11, reduce the overall out-of-balance approach by MSHA as it relates to their budget, amount of resources spent, where these resources are spent, policy reviews, and transparency to the U.S. citizenry and the regulated mining community. In summary, in a recent mining safety conference I attended, the central theme was that an effective safety program must not always use techno-speak and tough policy talk, but more of personal connection and a caring approach to each and every person. That's the best way to be a parent, as I've learned, a spouse, friend, and yes, a regulator. In this way, also, MSHA should look more at this approach and how to be a more effective accountability organization for the mining community. After all, mining is critical to our economy and here in Western North Carolina, as we all know. In fact, if it isn't grown, it has to be mined. MSHA is required, a smart MSHA is therefore required in this, the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank all three of our witnesses for their testimony this morning. And we'll start with a round of questions, and I'll begin. First of all, to Mr. Bratton and Mr. McNeely, I looked like some of the MSHA produced training materials with video, and it appears from what you said that some of the practices that are in their videos actually don't comply with some of their safety mandates. Is that correct?
Well, actually, the safety video was dismissed. They were dismissive of it, saying that they weren't aware of the existence of the video. And as far as the specifics about climbing on the side of the truck, there's not specifics about that in the standard. It's about safe access and things like that. So it's broad enough where they can take and interpret what they want. And so that's what they did with the imminent danger order. The inspector was on a screen tower, 600 feet away, screamed imminent danger, and we had to go down there and clear the area. Truck driver, when he was approached, said, sir, this is a violation. He said, well, I used 3 points of contact. That's what I'm told to do. And anyway, the training video, MSHA is purposeful in allowing themselves subjective interpretation at the time of the citation. And they also fall back on sets of circumstances being different. When you are able to get a citation vacated, they will not specifically state anything that would be precedent setting because they want to continue to issue those citations. They just may understand that at this point you put together a good enough defense, so they got to vacate it. So I don't know if there's not anything specific in their regulations that says that was a safe way to access it. They just say you're supposed to use safe access, and that driver did in accordance with a training video that they had, and they just wanted to dismiss it. It wasn't convenient for their argument. That's how they work.
Let me say too, and I was going to say this at the outset. First, I thank you for coming to testify. And when we had set this hearing up, and I had you all selected as witnesses, I really appreciate again your coming forward. Sometimes these agencies will intimidate some of our witnesses. In fact, I found it difficult sometimes to get folks to come and testify because they fear, as someone said, retribution. I will tell all three of you, if there's any instance of what you feel is retribution or anyone getting any difficulty as a result of your testifying today, I want you to notify the subcommittee and myself immediately.
Thank you.
I guarantee you I will handle those people, and they will not forget the treatment that I will offer. And then when I talk about retribution, I know how to provide it. But I thank you for coming out. And this is the way, it's very serious. I mean, I have so many instances in which these agencies have become so powerful that they do intimidate folks. And so I thank you. And you can tell them, too, if you hadn't appeared, I probably would have subpoenaed your butt and had you all here anyway. So. But that being said, it sounds like the penalties, they've gone overboard with the penalties. How is the industry affected by these, was it 500% increases, Mr. Bratton, Mr. Matilda, Stoll? Are they imposing a financial hardship?
I can just say if I may. We have had, at one of our locations, 2.2 million man-hours without a lost time accident. The other location has had approaching 500,000. We've had 3-4 years in a row record-setting injury rates. Our injury rate is about half or a third of it. Mr. McNeely mentioned MSHA's injury rate woes internally.
Now that's their inspectors and their folks?
That's everybody that they would employ, right. Apparently. Ours is like 1/3 of theirs. However, in 2012, we were fined $143,000. $143,000. Now, that doesn't add up. It just does not add up.
Has that multiple infractions that they charge you with?
Multiple infractions, correct.
Okay. And how about the others, Mr. McNary? What's your experience?
I'd like to say in our case, the fines have increased a good bit, but for our part, our biggest problem is the way that things get enforced in a manner, I mean, just like I mentioned this guardian issue, the fine might have been $200. And it might be very easy to beat that citation. You know, if you appeal it and go through the process for a couple of years. But the fact is, we can't resume production until those guards meet that particular inspector's.
So the instance you cited, was that one instance in which they closed you down, or have there been others?
Well, it is for like in the excavator issue. I have letters from Caterpillar going back to 2007 where they say MSHA will not give them good enough data to design a system for their excavators. And this thing just goes back and forth between you have to have handrails, you don't have to have handrails, just every few months, and it's been that way for years. And, you know, one day, all of a sudden, we get a $6,300 fine, and a few months before that, we're told we need to order handrails, and we're looking at buying $50,000 worth of handrails.
Is that you said that there have been some 20 inspections before, and not cited, what was that?
That was the guard.
Okay.
But on the excavator,
there's an inconsistency, a clear inconsistency in their standards and the unpredictability of enforcement.
right, and we're told we need to buy handrails, and we order some, and before they get here, we get a bulletin that says we don't need them. And then a few months after that, we hear the assistant secretary speak himself, and he says, you know, they're not required. And then the very next inspector that comes through the door writes us a $6,300 citation.
Mr. Bratton, what's your experience?
Well, the same as Mr. McNeely said, there's something that they now call a pattern violation, and they want to try to issue as many citations in order to then be able to continue to escalate the fines as part of a pattern violation. Also, within the rules to live by that they have, which I can't cite by memory, but they have these rules that, you know, are escalated, increased severity, increased fines. But one of the real costs that we haven't mentioned is the cost of due process. And the fact that in defending ourselves, the resources we have, because we are basically guilty until proven innocent in this system. And we have to hire attorneys, have our folks in-house have to spend a lot of time and effort on this. And they're citations that should never have been written. And there's 2 years and 3 months on the fellow climbing on the side of the truck. Preposterous. And it got to the end, and because you'll conference a citation, and you used to have more of an independent review. We've just gotten a bulletin this week that now, if we contest a citation and we ask that it be conferenced, we have to go to the field office supervisor, who is the supervisor of the investigator, who has trained the investigator to issue the citations, and we have to go to him for some potential impartial conferencing, which does not exist. And that system has now just been set up in the last week. That was June 17th that notice was issued. After that, then you appeal, you have an administrative law judge. Administrative law judge rules in our favor. MSHA doesn't believe that that's precedent setting. It may lead to you going in and settling. If you want to take it to the commission above, that's MSHA's commission, then it's a very biased group that rarely ever rules in opposition to MSHA. So this is just not, the whole system needs to be changed, and there needs to be an audit. I would love obviously the Government Accountability Office come into MSHA and take a look at their processes.
So that's something we can request. I'll confer with Mr. Meadows on that. Meantime, too, the law, Mr. Stoll cited the law being some 36 years old. It has a state association or national. Have you all developed an outline or suggestions for revisions in the law? Does anyone know? Mr. Stoll, you're the one cited the aging of the 1977 Mine Act that doesn't meet today's technological advancements and modernization. Are there specific recommendations for updating that statute?
I think corporately through the associations that we have, the National Mining Association, the North Carolina Aggregate Association, they have, submitted some of these ideas.
Maybe you or, I don't know, Mr. Bratton, you're with the Aggregate Association. If you have specific recommendations or changes in law that you could submit them to the subcommittee, we'd appreciate that.
If I may, Chairman, give you one example I brought with me is safety belts and lines. That's in the Mine Act. Let me just read it to you. It says safety belts and lines shall be worn when persons work where there is a danger of falling. And then it goes on and talks about working around bends, tanks, and other dangerous areas. Well, no company utilizes safety belts anymore. They've been deemed, by testing and everything else, to be very hazardous to the miner. That's just one good example. We use 4-point harnesses now. When we apply fall protection.
What would be good is, again, maybe as a result of this hearing, we can get the various state and national associations, if they come together, they probably have some of this drafted already, their suggestions, and then we will see if we can't shepherd that. Last year, I don't know how we did it, but we did the gas pipeline safety. It was similarly outdated. Got the darn thing passed. Even I'm still stunned. Mr. Waxman signed on as a co-sponsor. But
that is
miracles do happen, even in Congress. But again, with outdated laws and an agency that sort of spun out of control here, it seems like a basic guideline and statute cries out for some reform. So. We'll work with you, and I'm going to work with your representative, see what we can do in that regard.
I'd like to submit my oral testimony for the record.
Without objection.
And there is, I have 6 recommendations there with some specifics, and but I would be pleased to participate in the process.
Excellent. Well, I'm always quoted as saying, one of my favorite sayings is to folks is don't assume members of Congress know anything. Start from that proposition. And I can tell you, I'm learning a lot today, and that's how things get changed is by these kinds of hearings and exchanges. And then, of course, nice just to talk about it, but you do have to act on it. So with those comments, let me yield to Vice Chairman Meadows. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank each of you for your testimony. Obviously, some of these stories, Congressman Rowe, as we start looking at these pictures, it's very illuminating when we see really the things that you've been cited for. My concern is when you start getting cited for, Mr. McNeely, in your case, was afraid in on a seatbelt that was not part of the restraining harness. Does it become very difficult to figure out what you need to spend your money on and how best to protect your workers when you're looking at an enforcement mechanism? Does it make it just each time the inspector comes, you're trying to guess at what they're wanting you to pay attention to?
Well, it does, and that's probably one of the main things issues like this seat belt or like the excavator access that just really don't make sense. And I mean, mining companies have been using excavators since before MSHA was inspecting mining companies, and we still don't know how to check the oil safe. That's what we're in.
So, you're here today, you're three people of an industry. I mentioned in my opening testimony, I think there's 800 permitted sites across North Carolina. So you're just three of eight. You probably represent more than just three of those sites. But as you look at that, one of the arguments is going to be that you guys are unique, that it's only the three of you, that you're the few that are having to deal with this. Would you say that you have other miners that are experiencing similar or worse problems than what you've highlighted today?
I would say that the things that I've highlighted today are very common. And we probably have had fewer problems than a lot of other companies, even other companies that do a good job of safety.
Okay, Mr. Bratton?
Yes, well, that's why I asked people in the audience to stand at the end of my testimony in support of it. I believe.
So what you're saying is those people that stood, they've experienced similar situations like that?
Yes, if you'd like to stand again.
If you've experienced similar situations on ambiguities, would you stand? Thank you. Thank you.
I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. So, Mr. Stoll, you mentioned about a fine of $140 some odd thousand. You're a larger corporation, so you can afford that. Oh, you can't.
No.
So when we have fines like that, and let me shift our focus a little bit. When we are going with enforcement and we are seeing that it's unfair, and this kind of piggybacks on what I asked Mr. McNeil, when we feel like enforcement is unfair, owners of mines are in a unique situation in that they can't pick up their mine and move to another state. And so you're kind of trapped there and having to deal with it. But those that have options of mining abroad, do you see us losing more and more jobs to quarries if there are the natural resources in those foreign countries? Do you see this as being so punitive that other mines that would compete with us, we might lose jobs? It's tough when you're dealing with something that you measure in tons. That it's hard to import that. But do you see us losing some of the, let's say, high-quality quartz? Mr. Coleman?
The simple answer is yes. The reason is, when you look at our fines that we had from MSHA in 2012, you're looking at $143,000. That's hiring 2 miners. We've got 13% unemployment here in Mitchell County. So that's the difference. Now, the arbitrary and capricious part, I know that's kind of a harsh term, but when you look at the imbalance of applications by the inspectors that these two gentlemen mentioned, and then in our particular case, a lot of that $143,000 generation came from an inspection of some of our fall protection systems that were deemed by other inspectors to be okay. So what you breed is you breed complacency with the operators in that we're confused in what we have that's okay with the regulations and with MSHA and what we don't have that's okay. So, I train our guys with complacency, especially some of our older miners, not to get complacent, to be as safe as they can. If they know how to do something, always keep your guard up for safety. How would MSHA expect the operators then that they're regulating? If 3 inspectors come down and say that system's okay, and the next one comes in and finds us $100,000. So that imbalance can affect jobs.
So it's not knowing at what point you're going to get fined as Mr. McNeely said, you had 20 different inspections, and the chairman kind of pointed that out, 20 different inspections, and then all of a sudden you were asked to stop work and install the guardrails. So let me go to that point. When you have these major operations and when you get a citation and you have to stop work, that means sending people home? Does it mean shutting it down, or does it mean you just basically pay them and it's while you can't operate? Is that what you have to do occasionally? Mr. Radman, you can speak probably across the board. I mean, is there work stoppage that happens sometimes when these things are issued?
Yes. And that means it can be stopping the use of that piece of equipment, which in a conveyor means you can't operate the plant.
Right.
There are other activities that still could be done, but it is an extensive interruption.
Okay. Is there a matrix? My time's running out, so I'll finish with just a couple of very short questions here. Is there a matrix that says, okay, if you violate this is a major offense, and you're subject to a $50,000 fine if you do this, or you're subject to work? Do you have? I mean, to give a practical example, when I'm on the highway and I never speed, Sheriff. But when I'm on the highway and I'm going past the speed limit sign, I know at the minute I go beyond 55 miles an hour that I have the risk of getting a fine. Do you have the proper speed limits? Is this legislation or the regulations that are in place? Do you understand all the speed limit signs that are out there, or are there some of them that are hidden behind bushes and things like that?
The short answer is no, we don't. And it's more like instead of having a speed limit, the signs say travel at a safe speed. So as you come through Bakersville, safe speed could be one. As you go through Spruce Pine, safe speed could be another. And it could also be...
So it's up to the police officers to decide that.
Exactly. In some of these cases, it's things as picky as, say you were sitting in a turn lane to turn left, and you get stopped, and the patrolman says your turn signal blinks too slow. And you say, well, my car's a brand new Toyota, and it's designed by all the safety standards. And he says, well, I think it blinks too slow, it's a hazard. So you need to fix it.
Wow.
And then
That's a good word.
And then before you get it fixed, you get a bulletin that says your turn signal is fine.
Good word picture. I'll close with this because Mr. Stoll, you mentioned complacency, and I've visited some of these mines. I personally have visited, and I'm not going to mention any names in terms of what mines I've been in, but I haven't found complacency. In fact, I found just the opposite. Because as a guy that doesn't know what he's doing, I had to sign unbelievable waivers. Unbelievable. I had to go through a safety class to be there. And then I got, in one particular area, they got all concerned because I left my Coke can sitting on a thing, and the wastebasket lid was half open. And they said, no, you got to close the wastebasket lid. We need to make sure we get rid of this Coke because we can get fined in case it attracts bees and it could potentially sting somebody. Is that an exaggeration, or have you heard something like that before? I mean, I was shocked to hear that.
That's happening.
All right. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Recognize now Dr. Brown.
I thank the chairman. Mr. McNeely, just to let you know that safety belt looked a lot better than the one I put on the airplane I flew in or And if you fly much, you'll see that. And I think there's a larger theme here today. It's one of overreach of government and a moving target. And let me sort of share with you some things that may not have to do with mines. Well, one mine's like, you have a silica mine in my district, and they were MSHA violation for a 2-prong toaster instead of a 3-prong toaster in the office. And, you know, I naively thought when I've only been in Congress 4.5 years, but I thought the canary had you have MSHA violation, something very significant. might get in a Coke can or a two-prong toaster when you're trying to toast a sandwich. And I think that inconsistency that varies from inspector to inspector makes it impossible to conform. It's a moving target, and it may vary from one district to another. You cannot. And I almost laughed when you said, welcome to Medicare. I've been dealing with this for 35, 40 years with Medicare rules and regulations. You cannot do it. You can't offer your business and run your business. We have your testimony in detail. We treat safety of our mines very, very important. And the Whitewater Quarry has had only one lost time accident in the past 13 years. That's amazing. And the Hewitt Quarry has had only one lost time from an accident in 27 years. And one of the lost times recently was someone thought they were having a heart attack at the site. I can recall a OSHA at one of our hospitals where the handicap rail in the handicap bathroom, the OSHA folks came by and said it should be here. The OSHA didn't see occupational safety. People said it should be here. And that would be funny, except somebody had to come in and change all that, spend half a day doing that. And I told the hospital administrator, I said, well, this is simple. Just put you some brackets up, and when OSHA comes, put the rail here, and when OSHA comes, stick the rail up here. That's solving the problem. But it doesn't do anything to do the primary goal, which is to make our miners safer. And I think that Mr. Stolze brought out at the very beginning, the purpose of these acts is to make a safe working place for miners to do their job. And it looks to me like that certainly, Mr. Medley, the operation you have focuses on it. I can't imagine a workplace being any more safe than that. And to be deemed for something as ridiculous as a frayed end of a belt that doesn't even have anything to do with staying in there, that would be like the end of my belt here is big and won't keep my pants up far down. I mean, that's how silly that is. So, I think, and Mr. Stahl, here was something I want to comment on. Mr. Bratton, you brought this up at the very beginning. One operator explained he was cited for a violation when a miner was operating in the same fashion suggested by the MSHA training video. The MSHA inspector told the operator that the training video was incorrect, and it was up to the inspector to determine the proper procedure. How in the world do you know what that is? You don't. So you can't control.
You're operating in the dark. It's like being in the darkness. You can't tell what's going to be a fine, what's going to be a citation, what's not.
I'm going to ask this panel a very tough question now, and it may not be a fair question, but any of you can jump on. Do you feel that these inspectors are required to pressure the right citations on every inspection? If they go back and don't find anything wrong with your operation, do you feel like they're pressured too much?
Yes, and we've had instances with members. There's a member that has an operation in the western part of the state, and they had 0 citations. Well, then a couple of days later, 3 engine inspectors showed up with the field office supervisor and said, "You got 0 citations. There's no doubt. There's no way you can have 0 citations. I'm staying here until you get citations." I gave them about 3 citations. Then the next week, they came back for another inspection. And it's...
Excuse me. Could you ask the witness when this occurred?
To respond to the chairman's correct.
Where this occurred?
When this occurred?
Well, I've got somebody in the audience that can tell you exactly.
Was it in the last year, 5 years?
I don't know. David?
2010, in the last 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will finish by 2 things to show you how hard it is for business to run. In my medical practice, at the end of every month, we clean out the drawers, the closets for any medicine that may be getting near going out of date. And we send it to the homeless clinic so that people that don't have access to care can get some medicine. We put it in a bag. Well, there are 2 bags in the medical office. One's a red bag, that's a biohazard bag. One's just a clear trash bag. Also, the nurse stuck it in the red bag. The patient inspector comes in and said, "What's in that bag?" That was a $1,800 item to put it in the wrong bag to take it home. Second is a needle that we use to draw fluid around a pregnant woman to check for their maturity, fetal maturity, so we can do that. Just to explain to you, there is no safety. There isn't one in the universe you can buy. We didn't have a record, a letter in our office to say there wasn't one in the universe. That was a $1,700 fine. We did exactly what you guys did. We wrote the check for $3,500 to get these people out of our office so they wouldn't be back every day. When you make a moving target, I mean, literally, you cannot meet the standard, so it's almost extortion. It's so frustrating because you would just tell me what to do or say, hey, Doc, you should have done this. We wouldn't do that. We would absolutely follow those rules. And the last thing, I've got, my time is up, I want to ask a question, and maybe later. All of this money that's collected in fines, 120 million, and 19,005, there's 20 million. I'm rounding off these numbers. How much of that money is reinvested back in true education about how to make your workplace safe? Mr. Stoll.
Well, I think there's opportunities with that money.
You know how much of it is? I mentioned you heard the word 5 million. Is that how much?
How much is invested back?
Yes, sir, in education. In other words, instead of not punishment, but to educate you all how to run a safer mind.
I think MSHA's intentions are reflected in their budget by increasing the enforcement and decreasing training and education. That's what their true intentions actually are when they submit these budgets. I would like to mention something about the training and education part. On MSHA's, and I'd like to submit this for the record, on MSHA's very own website, it actually says it's a historical account. It says in response, this is talking about the number of mining fatalities since 1910. The advent of Bureau of Mines was established in 1910 to promote and improve safety in mining through research and training. So does it make any sense with the reduction of mining fatalities to the very record low levels today that there's a motivation to increase the enforcement budget and decrease the training budget? The state grant program is slated to be defunded here in North Carolina. That, to me, a lot of small operators, and we have other mechanisms to do our training, but for a lot of small operators, probably in this room, that is a critical resource. So therefore, there's a disconnect with where they're putting their budgetary focus on and everything else from that perspective. The training thing, the gentleman over here, Mr. Bratton, mentioned that there was some disconnects with some videos. We actually discovered one of those on a fall protection video. It's titled Fall Protection, Your Lifeline for Safety. And there were actually 2 or 3 citational items that MSHA had in that video. One was where I was taught in fall protection applications, which is somewhat of a technical application of safety, not to choke a lanyard around the rail. This particular video shows a miner in their training video choking the lanyard around the top rail instead of using the provided on the manlift basket, the provided anchor points. The other item, the gentleman's working at height and they've got a hoist and a hook, has a broken safety latch. And we personally have been cited for broken safety latches before. So I think there's a need for them to update their education and training resources instead of putting more money in enforcement. It just makes sense to me.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll yield back.
Thank you. And we'll now yield to Congressman Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stoll, if you can tell me, you indicated competitor for your particular product,
China.
And so what you're saying is that if costs continue to go up, and a part of those costs are, of course, fines that you're paying for things that you can't figure out, it puts China in a better position to compete with us in the worldwide market for your product. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Bragg, if I could, you all started to talk about safety belts and harnesses, and your time ran out, and I see that there's a harness laying there on the floor, and I don't know anything about the difference. Is the safety belt like the old lap belt in the car, or what is the safety belt like?
The safety belt just went around your midsection. It was was tied off, and the problem was that there were numerous spinal injuries from falls.
So we're making an analogy that if I make the analogy to the car, like we've been making some of these others, it would be like the old lap belt in the cars when I was a kid, as opposed to the shoulder belt with the airbags and the lap belt combined. Is that what you're saying?
I would say so, yes, sir. And what Mr. Stoltz was talking to was that the regulations still specifically describe a belt that is not even used anymore because it's not safe, and so that's why.
So technically, if they really wanted to cite you, they could cite you for having the safer equipment. So I could be, using our car analogy, if I was pulled over at a roadblock to check on safety inspection, and I have all the latest airbags and shoulder harness, technically the officer could write me a ticket because I don't have the old-fashioned lap belt.
Well,
Is that a fair assessment? Go ahead and tell me what the differences are, and I would like you to, because we have TV camera here,
if you don't
and I'd
mind.
like you to show the TV folks the 4-point harness so that everybody can understand how much safer this is, who might see this at a later date, or who might be looking at the congressional record at a remote location.
This is the safety harness that we were issued a citation for.
We're not going to be able to hear you.
I'm sorry.
Just maybe you could get the narrative.
This is asking to do this.
No problem, but we want you to describe so we have in the record of the hearing.
This is a safety harness that Wakestone was cited for as being defective. Mr. Massey, would you approach and show them the defect that we are still fighting? It's not very obvious, but I think we also contacted the manufacturer of this harness and asked them if this harness was safe to use, and they issued a written letter stating that this.
So the prey on the end is.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Is what you recited on?
Yes, sir.
Similar to the seatbelt,
Yes, sir.
but not as brave.
Right.
Well, I appreciate that.
But the analogy within a car, it's hard to say. It's just like Max said, where you have a turn signal that blinks just up, or he may say that airbag that you have is in the wrong place, or that maybe you turned your seatbelt or whatever. That's a citation.
Yeah, and here's where it gets interesting. As I told you all at the beginning, I used to be a criminal defense attorney. If an officer, and the sheriff laws may be a little bit different in North Carolina, but if an officer pulls somebody over because they have a faulty exhaust system that's not built to manufacturer specs, and you can establish that it was in fact built to manufacturer specifications, a criminal defendant, everything from that point forward, at least in the Commonwealth of Virginia, any other evidence, if that was the reason for the stop, would be stricken and the case dismissed. So what we're saying is that we've got folks who are trying to provide jobs in the community. We hold them to a standard that is higher than we're holding standards when you have due process in the criminal courts. So you're being treated worse than the criminals are. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That would be my opinion as well. I will tell you that, when you hear these stories, and I've heard these stories in Virginia too about things, one that I heard, and it was a coal mine. They must have 10,000 rollers on a conveyor belt, and one of my mines got cited because they had one roller that wasn't rolling properly out of the 10,000 some rollers. It didn't create any safety effect whatsoever. I'll also tell you that while there was no citation, I believe, written, I was out talking to some miners on a parking lot, and I have had the mine safety training, but one of the folks with me had not had the mine safety training, and somebody spotted coming up the road the MSHA folks. All of a sudden, we're being hustled off in a car because we're not going into mine, mind you. We're just standing in the parking lot. But there was a fear that standing in the parking lot without having had the mine safety training class could get that mine cited as a violation of safety rules. And all we're doing is talking. And I can tell you that words can be very powerful, but I don't believe they cause mine safety problems when you're just standing in a parking lot talking issues. Would you agree that that's fairly typical of some of the things that you all are hearing?
Yes, sir. And also, whoever saw the MSHA vehicle told you that MSHA was coming
Probably in violation.
It was in violation because that's advance notice.
I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't say where I was exactly. And Mr. Bratton, in this area of scarce resources, is it your opinion that MSHA is spending most of its money in enforcement rather than attempting to instruct and train operators?
Yes, sir. I believe that to be a fact.
And I will tell you, sometimes it's frustrating because I'm told that 5-10 years ago, when operators would come, at least now again, most of my folks are cold, although do have advocates in the district, that somebody would say, hey, you need to get this straightened out, or in the case of the harness, it's gotten a little frayed, it's not a problem now, but make sure you keep an eye on that. And there wouldn't be a citation written, or if there was might be a warning written, but it was down the road before you started hitting fines. And my understanding is now, at least from the folks who talk to me in my district, that they're quick to find, and very rarely do they say, hey, keep an eye on this, or drive a little slower, or get that one roller fixed.
My understanding is that if they see something that could be interpreted as a violation, that they are required to write that citation. So the inspectors have no leeway to advise on, okay, I see this could be a problem down the road, let's take care of it.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might take another minute, I know I'm over time, but if I could take a minute just to pontificate. One of the problems I think we have in our federal system, and is creeping into the state systems as well. Historically, the law was established as both law and equity. And equity was doing what was fair, even if you didn't meet the black letter of the law, or if you violated the black letter of the law. If that interpretation was unfair in the circumstances, we gave our officials the authority to figure out, okay, wait a minute, that's not a fair interpretation. Starting about the end of World War II, this country went away from that. We're all looking at black letter. That's why the code volumes get bigger every year, because we're trying to do black letter. But my experience is you can't black letter everything. And perhaps we need to reestablish the principles of equity that were founded in the Anglo-American jurisprudence system. And by abandoning them, we're making a system that the citizens no longer have confidence in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're welcome.
Technically, under the rules of the committee, the only one that's really permitted to applaud for Mr. Griffith is your representative, Mr. Meadows. So no, we're out of order. There may be additional questions that we'll have. Does anyone have any last-minute questions that we have? But witnesses, I'll advise you that we may submit additional questions that we'd ask you to respond, and your response would be made part of the record. I thank you for coming out this morning. Mr. Yield. I'm sorry, I'm glad to yield to the gentleman.
I just want to again say thank you. The other that I would ask you for the record, we have a few days here. If you will give us additional examples from perhaps other people that were not here today, Mr. Bratton, you're probably in the best position to do that, to submit for the record other examples of where we feel like we've had unfair citations. That would be very helpful. And with that, I'll
we would and we would welcome that. And the record is open for 7 days. If necessary, we can extend that. But through your representative, Mr. Meadows, he will make certain that submission is part of or referenced in the record today. So with that, I will thank you again, Mr. Stoll, Mr. McNeil, and Mr. Bracken, for your participation and your testimony today. So you're excused. And I will call up the second panel. The second panel consists of one witness, and that individual is Mr. Marvin Lichtenfels, and he is the Deputy Administrator for Metal, Non-Metal, Safety and Health Administration. While the staff changes the witness table, we'll welcome And if we just stay standing, sir, it is, again, custom of our committee and investigative panel to swear in our witnesses. We raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give and provide to this subcommittee of Congress is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Witness answered in the affirmative and like that. I'd like to welcome you, sir, and on behalf of your position as Deputy Administrator for metal, non-metal mine safety. Welcome you. Since you're the only witness in this panel, you have some leeway as far as time in providing your testimony, but as I advised the other witnesses this morning, additional information, data, or testimony you'd like to be part of the record, you can request through your chair. So with that, welcome, and you are recognized.
Thank you. Chairman Micah and members of the subcommittee, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to testify about metal and non-metal mine safety and health and the actions MSHA and the industry have taken to protect the safety and health of the nation's metal and non-metal miners. Let me say at the outset that we at MSHA take the concerns of metal and non-metal industry very seriously. We want to maintain...
Just a second, sir. I'm going to try to get that a little bit closer. Thank you.
We want to maintain and build on our history of working together to improve mine safety. What we are doing at MSHA, as well as the mining industry, is moving mine safety in the right direction. Compliance is improving in the nation's mines, and most importantly, mine safety is improving with back-to-back years of the lowest injury and fatal rates in mining history. MSHA has engaged in substantial outreach to metal and non-metal stakeholders in all areas of the country, including meeting with aggregate associations in North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida, to discuss issues of mutual concern and identify solutions that will benefit the mining community. We have expanded our working relationships by forming alliances with aggregate associations and others to work together. As part of the agency's outreach, MSHA has changed the way it rolls out safety and health initiatives. We involve our stakeholders and conduct outreach and training in advance of implementation. We post training on our website so that industry has access to the same training that MSHA inspectors receive. This year is the 35th anniversary of the Federal Mine Safety and Health Act of 1977, which provides the same protection to metal and non-metal miners that coal miners enjoyed as a result of the Federal Coal Mine Health and Safety Act of 1969. This act has been successful. In 1977, 134 metal and non-metal miners lost their lives in their workplaces. By 2012, the number had fallen to 16, equaling the record low set in 2011. While we have made significant progress since 1977, too many metal and non-metal miners are still being injured and losing their lives in preventable accidents. So far this year, there have been 9 fatalities at metal and non-metal mines. With input from our alliance partners, MSHA has taken several actions to reduce fatality and injury rates even further. These include rules to live by, initiated in 2010, which focuses on the most common mining deaths and how to prevent them. Guarding 1 and 2 to reduce violations of MSHA guarding standard, and a policy letter MSHA published clarifying MSHA's fall protection standard. MSHA has renamed the Small Mines Office the Small Mines Consultation Program, which has refocused its efforts to better assist small mines and work with the aggregate associations to identify those in need of the program services. This office provides courtesy inspections and on-site visits to explain MSHA's initiatives and help operators understand and better comply with MSHA rules and regulations. To improve consistency in the application and enforcement of standards, MSHA has strengthened its inspector training programs, including implementation in 2010 of a new training program for field office supervisors. MSHA has added a course for inspectors and supervisors on professionalism and consistency to address concerns raised by mine operators. In January 2012, the agency implemented pre-assessment conferences, giving the operators the opportunity to resolve issues prior to contesting citations. In 2012, MSHA conferenced over 2,000 metal and non-metal citations. To date, 67% of those citations have been resolved without litigation. These efforts have been successful. Metal and non-metal total citations and orders are down 18% from 2010 to 2012. In 2011, the all-injury and fatality rate at metal and non-metal mines was the lowest recorded in mining history. Preliminary data for 2012 show these rates have declined even further. Nonetheless, one mining death is one too many, and MSHA's metal and non-metal program area will continue to do whatever it can, working with the industry, to reduce the number to zero and to keep miners healthy and safe. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Well, thank you, and I'll start with some questions. You've heard, again, some industry representatives cite sort of the inconsistency with which they impose fines and penalties, and a lack of sort of standard interpretation of the requirements. Would you like to respond in general, or to any of the specific instances that were cited?
In general, sir, I'd like to say that there have been inconsistencies, and we've been trying to address those in a number of ways. I mentioned regarding the fall protection, particularly.
When was that?
Regarding PowerPoint, I mentioned
But you had said that you have some program, I guess, to try to get the standards, standard equity in training your MSHA inspectors.
We developed training programs on professionalism.
Tell me about those. Are some of them most recent, or what's the history?
Started in 2010 and 2011, we expanded to include professionalism. Our supervisors attend training every 2 years, and our inspectors receive training every 2 years.
It's a little hard to hear you. Maybe. Does that thing extend any further, or maybe you could come up closer to it?
Okay.
So 2010, 2011. Okay, maybe we could do it. Is it fading a bit?
Okay.
But you've heard the complaints, and again, no one benefits by anyone being injured, and certainly not by a fatality. And I'm sure the cost of a fine is minuscule compared to the loss of life and the cost, incurred when something goes wrong. Now, with these 9 fatalities that you cited, had these companies previously, do you know if they've been cited, and were there any instances of safety violations that were cited in the 9 fatalities that led to their death?
Yes, without having the specifics, there were citations issued in each situation.
But I mean, the citation was issued after the death.
Right.
I was wondering if through your inspections you'd identified a situation that would have, or any of these folks were guilty of violations before the fatality. Was the system working? And then someone didn't adhere to your recommendation or your citation.
I don't have that information, but
It would be interesting
I can look
for
into
the
that.
record if you could provide that to the subcommittee. The other issue, well, the law, you're touting the 35 years, but you heard also, in fact, the gentleman sitting in the same seat there, Mr. Stahl, and others said that the law is out of date. Would you concur with that, one? And then two, has the administration or the agency recommended to Congress attempts recently to update the statute?
The standards are continually reviewed. Rulemaking process is a long and tedious effort. The one effort that we made recently was fall protection.
And that's in rule. I'm talking about statute. And quite specifically, one of the provisions of statute was cited as out of date, according to, again, modern technology or equipment.
I believe Mr. Stoll was talking about fall protection standard.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what I was going to say, that we addressed by a policy letter. And what we did...
But does I got 4 members of Congress here. We changed the law. The law was written in 77. Has your Mine Safety Administration or the Obama administration, or prior to that, the Bush or somebody, have they recommended changes to Congress in the law that you're aware of?
No, sir. Not that I'm aware of.
Well, again, I think one of the things we're going to do from this hearing, and these hearings are nice, but if you don't do anything to follow up, it's sort of a lot of rhetoric. So I'd probably ask Mr. Meadows to head up an ad hoc group to bring together, and I think we're going to have to bring in the labor folks. Mr. Meadows, staff tells me that Labor Committee would oversee the authorization of that law. But I think we're going to look at trying to get from the administration, which I don't care what administration it is, but if there are problems with the law, or the law is 35 years old, needs to be updated, and they should provide the leadership to give us some recommendations. And then also the Committee of Jurisdiction, we will ask them if they would consider. In fact, we probably should, if they won't do it, and we could do a joint one, or we could do it ourselves, is follow up in Washington, bring the drag the administrator in and some of the other folks, and see. I'll have to find out where they have attempted to do any changes in the law. How long have you been with them?
5 years.
No, any attempt that you know of?
No major attempt.
All right, well, maybe this will be the spark, or be the genesis for looking at the law itself. How many inspectors do you all have? What's your budget?
Metal has about 350 inspectors, total of about 600 FTE.
350 inspectors?
Yes.
And what's your budget?
The budget was approximately $89 million prior to sequestration.
Mm-hmm. Now, 89 million, and your fines were, now, I saw 143. How much was that? Is that metal and coal? That's all. $154 million in 2011. $154 million in fines. Now, what's non-metal? Do you know?
I don't have it with me, sir.
Is most of that you think in coal? Okay, so what, you don't know how much you collected in fines?
No. I don't have that data.
10 million last year, 100 million?
I don't have it with me.
It was interesting that one fellow here, they said 143,000 in fines to that one company. And I'm sure that the fine is just part of the cost, because they probably have to retain counsel or in-house counsel and the time spent appealing. Of that, you had cited 3,000 citations. What period was that in?
That was in 2012.
2012?
2,000 citations that were conferenced, I believe.
2,000 citations in 2012. and you don't know how much the fines were. You said 67% were what?
Settled without further litigation.
So are they all litigated or contested?
No, those were
Some
just-
people just
Right.
pay up and
Yes.
give up and pay up.
Yes.
67%. I'm really curious is about the figure, and please provide that to the committee in the total fines for 2012. I'd just be curious as to what the average fine was. And was there a category of lead fines and violations of the 2,000?
The standard most frequently
Yeah,
cited.
right. What's the big violation out there these days?
Typically electrical violations. Guarding used to be number one. It's
Well,
not.
guarding
Used to be a number one cited
Yeah.
standard.
I'm sorry, I didn't, again, understand you.
Guarding violations, they
Guarding?
mentioned, yes.
Guarding the...
Conveyor belts, guarding of conveyor belts to prevent accidental contact.
Oh, okay, the actual guard.
Yes.
Okay. And that was one actually that was cited quite a bit by the panelists as you
Yes.
all not having consistent standards.
Yes.
So the highest violation in the past has been on an infraction for which you don't have the standards. Is that what you're testifying?
What I'd like to say, Chairman, is that in 2010, we developed a PowerPoint to provide guidance to industry, and it was in cooperation with industry, National Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association, and a number of other state associations. And we put the first PowerPoint out on guarding conveyors, and we followed it up in 2012 with a second PowerPoint on guarding everything else. And since that point, the guarding violations are down 40%. So the effort was successful.
So there has been, that is no longer your primary violation. I think what you heard here today was a plea for sort of some consistency and common sense in this. The other thing too is do you not, instead of fining them, do you not give them, write them a warning or something and say, like this belt that they showed, we had one belt on the screen and the other one, the harness that they brought here, appears to be fraying. Can you in 30 days correct the situation, or you will get your butt fined? I mean, do you approach it from a standpoint of having them actually take some action, or is this just a fine city, where you come in and levy the fine?
The Mine Act requires an MSHA inspector to cite a violation every season.
The what?
The Mine Act requires an MSHA inspector to cite.
And is that your interpretation, or is that?
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, see, there again, I think that
If I could answer.
the law, we might want to look at that. I know I'm not as familiar with MSHA, but and I don't have mining that I know of in my district, and have to check with the CIA on that. In any event, just a sort of common sense approach. I remember my dentist, who's since passed away, probably from dealing with the OSHA, but he went in one day to get my teeth cleaned or some torture he did to me, and he shows me a bottle of whiteout, and he got fined with OSHA for having this chemical bottle of whiteout, I guess, on his desk, and we went to town on that one, and I thought we would change some of the procedures for OSHA to, give some warning, like don't put the whiteout out, and maybe we need to go The other thing too, it cited 3 guys show up at one plant. I mean, how many mines did the 350? Now, is this just non-metal, your 350?
Yes.
And how many mines do these 350 cover?
Slightly over 12,000 miles.
12,000. So they try to visit once or twice a year.
The Mine Act requires underground mines to be inspected 4 times a year and surface mines 2 times a year.
And you're needing that?
Yes.
Okay. And they show up in pairs of 3 sometimes. Is that customary?
That wouldn't be customary. No. Normally it's one inspector.
And then it sounds kind of rude to show up to someone who hasn't had any fines. We heard that testimony today. Have you heard that instance where 3 show up and say, you guys haven't been fined, we're going to find something, and then harass them?
No, I was not aware of it.
Do these guys, the operators, have some ability to not whistle blow, but to let the agency know that there are people who are exceeding reasonable approaches to enforcement?
We've formed alliances with a number of state associations, and we ask.
No, but do you have like within someone overseeing the 350 or you, is the only thing to do is call you up and honestly and say, hey, they're busting our chops and just not being fair? How does someone say that there are poor performers? I mean, you probably have 325 of these guys that are doing their job every day and finding their P's and Q's. But it sounds like you've got some people that are harassing folks unduly. Is there an appeals process or some way that they can whistle blow?
There is no formal process, but we do
That might be something.
we do get phone calls and emails and letters, and we respond.
I think that's
and we
another thing,
investigate.
Mr. Meadows, when we're looking at revising the law, that there, I mean, Mr. Griffiths can tell us every dog has his day in court, but it doesn't sound like every mine operator has a fair process.
There's a formal process for contesting violation.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Yes.
That sounds like it's fairly expensive. Also, I'd like to see some resolution. Maybe we could get these things over in a hurry. I think the first thing is their responsibility needs to be changed just from the enforcement. I could see a violation, a certain kind of violations where they would be cited and fined immediately, but others in which there's some ability to correct the situation and then the fine imposed if they don't comply. So I think we need to go back and look at the whole law and make it make a little bit more sense. I'd like to see the recommendations, and I think we could convene with some of your folks too. The other thing too is I heard that there are international standards.
Yes.
And you all comply to the international standards, I imagine, and then go above and beyond that for U.S. standards. Would that be a fair description? Or what?
There are consensus standards such as the National Electric Code, the ISO standards, and various other standards. The mine standards take those into consideration when they were drafted, but they were drafted in the mid-'80s.
So that
Most of them accepted prior standards that were in effect from years before that.
And again, I think it's important that be updated. On mine standards, is there like an internet? I don't know. Again, I'm learning. Is there an international mine safety standards panel within whatever it is?
There are some international committees.
And we belong.
We participate in this.
And also, for the record, maybe you could tell us the last participation, find out from your folks what our participation level has been, and I'd also be interested where we differ, again, from where the United States has different standards than the international. because it sounds like even the manufacturers are having difficulty getting standards out of your agency for, again, the best practices, and that's what we want, or the best configuration of equipment.
If I could address two of those issues. The fall protection was an example of what we did to try to clarify a standard. Many of our standards are considered performance standards. In other words, the operator finds the best way to comply with the standard, and then the inspector shows up and decides whether it meets our standards. So it's difficult. They're not specific in many cases, but it allows the operator leeway to try to comply with it. One of the problems with the fall protection standard that was read this morning was that it didn't have a number of what height there was a danger of falling from. It just said where there's a danger of falling. So we listened to industry and again, the inconsistency problem, and what is a hazard, what's not a hazard, and we, by policy letter, adopted a portion of the OSHA standard that said anything above 6 feet is a hazard and you need to have fall protection. And that was, I think, well received by industry, that they now had a number that they could comply with, at least made it a little more clear. And we tried to do that for fall protection. We tried to do the same thing with the guarding PowerPoints, and I think that has been well received by industry. Our hope is to continue to do that as these issues come up.
Thank you. Mr. Pettis, or Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I understand you are not the one who is doing these inspections. I saw you all over there writing copious notes. Is there anything that alarms you today about what you've heard here from our 3 previous witnesses?
Well, I'm concerned about the inconsistencies. If 3 people showed up and for that purpose, I'm a little concerned about that. I will look into that.
But it's not just the 3 people. We had, the majority of the people here stood up saying that they, so inconsistency. So how do you, as a deputy administrator, plan to change that? Or are you?
Well, I think we're making some headway. I believe that with the training that we've put in place, there have been fewer complaints.
Okay, but your budget, you say training, but your budget, and you renamed something to talk about how you're going to train it. I think in your testimony you talk about renaming it, but your budget doesn't reflect a training emphasis. It reflects an enforcement emphasis. Why does your budget not match with your testimony?
What I'm referring to is training of our inspectors.
Oh, so you're going to spend more time training your inspectors?
No, sir. We've been training our inspectors, and we ask them to get 48 hours of training every 2 years.
To write better citations, or what do you do?
To promote consistency, to understand the standards. There's a large number of subjects.
So do you give them raises based on how consistent they are?
No, sir, that's not the way.
So they can be inconsistent and still get a raise?
They get evaluated by their supervisor based on their performance.
So that performance is based on how many citations they write?
No, sir.
So what's your matrix for evaluating their performance?
They complete their inspections.
So as long as they do 2 inspections on surface mines and 4 inspections?
That's only part of it. There's reports they have to complete. The citation.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand. How do you evaluate whether they're doing a good job or not?
The procedure is the supervisor of each field office reviews everything that is written by the inspector.
So he reviews the citations that are written by the inspector?
Yes, and he travels with that inspector at least once a year, in most cases more often, to evaluate their performance in the field.
Is there a slide? Can you put up that slide? This slide indicates a downward trend from 2000 to 2012 in terms of the incident rate on aggregate operations. And you can see it was trending down, and then all of a sudden what we saw is in about 2007, a huge spike in fines. There doesn't seem to be really any correlation between fines and safety according to this particular one, and it looks like fines went up 300%, and yet there's no correlation. Can you explain why that is?
Part 100, which determines how a penalty is assessed.
What was that?
Part 100, 30 CFR, Part 100. That's the standard that determines how a citation, what the assessment for a citation. That was revised in that 2007.
Who revised that? Congress didn't revise that. Is that correct? That was you that revised that?
MSHA revised the standard.
So that's something that you could revise the other way?
That was based on following the 2006 disasters that occurred, and Congress felt that the penalties may not have been high enough.
But we see Congress was wrong there. Because, I mean, I know that comes as a shock to everybody. But if you're saying Congress said that there is a direct correlation with fines, this chart would say that there's not. Would you agree with that?
It certainly looks that way.
So why don't we go back to pre-2006 way of doing business? Because we're losing jobs here. It boils down to we may get to zero fatalities. The way that we get to zero fatalities, if we have zero jobs, we will get there. I mean, that's how you get there. And so my concern is that for every time that we make burdensome regulations, it means, as my colleague from Virginia pointed out, it means jobs going to China. And we can't afford any more jobs going to China. Do you believe we can afford any more jobs going to China?
Jobs are very important, sir.
So you wouldn't be in favor of anything that sends more jobs to China?
No.
Okay. So let's go back with the citations then.
Okay.
So if we went back to 2006 way of doing citations, do you see that it would make any effect really in terms of because it's trending down anyways at this point?
If I could say that MSHA is in the process of revising Part 100. It's been sent over.
To make it worse or better?
It will be put out for comment, and OMB is reviewing it. It will be put out for comment, and then that.
Okay. Is there a matrix today where if I have a certain kind of violation, I know that I'm facing a $1,000 fine?
It can be determined from Part 100, yes, the standard.
So there's a matrix. So you can give me this thing that says that if I've got a seatbelt that's sprayed, I know exactly what the charge is going to be. I don't believe that it exists.
It can be provided, yes.
What do you mean? Has it been provided to all these guys here?
There's a point system that's used for the assessment process. It's based on the history of previous violations and mine.
Okay, well, because it hits on another area, the history of previous violations. We heard testimony earlier from the association where they talked about that it's easier to just pay some of the fines. But the problem with paying the fines is that when you do that, you now have a history of violations.
Yes.
So it requires them to hire litigation to go after defending themselves on some of the ridiculous stuff we've seen here today. Because if they don't, then they're what you would call a habitual violator, and then that's not fair. It's almost saying that, instead of just paying, we're going to make you have to defend yourself, because if not, we're going to come back and we're going to penalize you greater. Is that true?
History is considered as one of the factors, yes.
So it's true that if I don't appeal, that you're going to consider me a violator.
The assessment is based on history.
Either way, it's a problem. As the chairman is pointing out, he's whispering to me, either way, it's a real problem. But, so when we see this, you're saying it's opening up for comment. Comment from who? OMB is looking at? Comment from the guys that you're finding, or comments from your 350 people that are working with you?
No, it's for the public comment.
So who's been noticed at this point for this public comment from OMB? I mean, who has received the notice to make comment on it?
It's not reached that stage yet, sir.
Okay, so
It's being reviewed, and then it will be a proposed rule, and then it will be made.
so what's the causal point of why it's being reviewed? I mean, who decided that we're going to review that?
I don't know that information.
So your boss,
Yeah, somebody higher than me, yes.
somebody higher than you decided, and what was the causal reason why we're reviewing that?
I don't know.
Can you get that to this committee?
Yes.
Okay. I want to finish up, and I appreciate the chair's indulgence. Let me finish up with just a couple more. You mentioned PowerPoints, that you've come out with a few PowerPoints. Are those PowerPoints that if the miners follow those PowerPoints, that you can assure us that there's not going to be citations with violations there?
I would hope so.
You would hope so.
Yes.
So if that's something, will you, for the record today, say that if they follow those and they get a citation, that your agency will waive that? Will you say that for the record today?
I will say if they follow that PowerPoint, they should not receive a citation.
I understand should not. That's saying that's different. They should not have gotten some of the citations they've already gotten, in my opinion, already. What I'm asking you is would you waive those and just concede that those are out of line?
If they brought that PowerPoint in as to prove their point, we would certainly consider that, sir.
I can tell you, this is very frustrating just to hear what we're having. We're talking about people's livelihood. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about putting people out of work. And yet, I want to finish with this last. You said that under MSHA that you were required to write a citation. I've read through reams of this. Some people say that I just can't sleep, so I read all this crazy stuff. But it's your interpretation that it requires a citation. It sounds like it has a whole lot of discretion, because when I read it, it doesn't look like it requires a citation. And my interpretation would be different than yours. Are you sure that the law says you have to write a citation?
That's our interpretation.
Okay. Well, let me show you how unfair that is.
You have to observe a violation before you write it. If I'm being clear.
Okay, that safety belt that's here. Is the safety belt still here? Show that to the gentleman, because I know you didn't get to see it. Be careful, because you're going to trip over an MSHA violation right there. So, is that something that you believe should have been cited?
If Mr. Bratton said he had a letter from the manufacturer said it was safe, I would think it should be okay. Yeah, that's.
So you're saying that it should have been cited, but
The inspector who observed it apparently felt that way, sir.
okay. All right. Well, and that brings me to my closing thought. If we put all the discretion in the hands of 350 inspectors, it depends on how bad of a morning they had. It depends on, I can tell you, I would be whining and dining those guys, taking them to dinner and making sure that they, but it really depends on if they had a bad hair day, on whether they're going to cite something. And with this particular thing, what you're saying is if we get a letter that says that that's in compliance, that citation should be waived.
I would think we should.
I know you would think, but let me just ask you.
If it was brought to my attention, I would see that it was vacated.
All right, so any problems that we have here in Western North Carolina, should we be bringing them to your attention?
Well, I would hope it doesn't need to be that way.
So who do you've heard multiple complaints today. Who do we go to? Because I can tell you, if I don't get this fixed, I don't have a job.
The process is this, and we encourage all mine do this, to discuss each situation with the inspector on site, try to resolve it at that point. If that's
But that doesn't happen. I can tell you that I've talked to him. How many of you would agree that that happens on a regular basis? That the inspector on site really tries to mitigate it and not write a citation? Does that happen? No, never. So we've got a problem maybe with our inspector just in my area, but I don't think so because I've got gentlemen from other areas as well. I appreciate the chair's indulgence. I'll yield that.
Thank you. Recognize Dr. Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman, for yielding. I think the chairman brought up something a minute ago, that what we've done in this country is we have taken a set of laws and we've thrown common sense out the window. And I'm out. And Ms. Whitman, I appreciate you being here. Let's take you off the job you have and put you back in the real world where all these people live every day trying to comply, trying to make a living, and trying to have a safe workplace. And you saw what Mr. McNeely got read out, the statistics of his workplace. Years got accomplished. Would you feel safe putting that harness on and doing anything? I would. I'd repel off anything. Would you feel safe in that?
particularly since you got a letter from the manufacturer.
Oh,
I didn't see the situation. Yes, sir, I would.
Okay, thank you. I would too. I absolutely would. I repelled off the fire tower at 4th of July. It's amazing what you'll do for votes. And I would put that on and go off anything because it's not unsafe. The belt that we saw there was not unsafe. But what Mr. Meadows just got through saying is, and like businesses like I was in for 30-something years, private businesses, to not fight you people, we write the check. And then we have affirmed that we're now not a safe workplace, so when you come back again, you find something, and the fines go. It's a catch-22 you cannot. And I think we have to put some common sense back in. And you can sense my frustration. And I'm putting you back in the private sector where you spent 20-something years. I know you did.
Yes, sir.
And you would look at that, and if you were working back where you were, you would be offended by this right here. And you get the frustration of these men and women out here that try to run these businesses safely. And I applaud your effort of MSHA trying to make a safe workplace. And clearly it's stated that a surface mine is safer than a deep mine. There's no question about that. And we know what happened at the Big Branch mine just a couple of years ago. The fatalities you mentioned, obviously 0 should be our goal. I agree in the workplace. The gentleman that thought he was having a heart attack at Mr. McNeely's shop, I think it was. If he died on the spot, would that count as a mine? Would that count as a fatality, a mine fatality?
Most likely not, sir.
Okay, it would not, but he was a violation. He was removed from that. That was considered an injury that day when he left. But so if these fatalities are not medical things, a diabetic that had a problem or
right.
Medical, okay, that helps me there. And how can you explain the safety record of MSHA versus the industry being high? How can we look those folks in the eye and write them a citation?
Well, it's a good question, and we're taking that seriously, and we meet on a monthly basis at headquarters to review the issue. A large portion of those claims are hearing loss. So it's difficult, but the rest are strains and sprains, and we are certainly dealing with them.
Okay. And how much of the money that you take, $150 million that comes in fines, goes back? And I think Mr. Meadows made a great point a minute ago that it's amazing how like minds think. But I'm thinking, if you put a training video on the web, that's your video. Why in the world should they have to break it? It's yours. You created it, and if that's what they're supposed to follow, is it like the IRS where if you follow my advice, we're still going to ding you? Because that's exactly what happens with the IRS, and that's one of the frustrations that the American people have. And if they follow what they believe is the correct thing to do, shouldn't that be okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if they follow those videos that are on the PowerPoints that you have on the web, I'm here to right out here for the record. That should just be wiped off, cleaned off the tape.
We should certainly review that and discuss it, yes.
Why would it be a review?
Well, if we put a video out there, we should make sure that it's accurate. I agree.
Well, I told you, agree with that, but if they follow what you put out,
Right.
and then about the international standards of let's say a company like Caterpillar, which was mentioned, follow the standards that are out there that they know right now, and yet that's a violation later. How in the world do you match those two?
It's difficult. I understand. And I was in the industry for 23 years, and I do understand.
But then
The point is, each situation has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
But if you follow the rules,
Yes.
as these people are, you shouldn't have to be explaining to somebody why you follow the rules, because you did. It shouldn't even be an issue. You agree with that?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Does any of the fine money that they pay, tens of millions of dollars, go back into the training we talked about in compliance?
The money goes.
Where does it go?
It goes to the treasury.
Treasury.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that would be something we would have to do legislatively.
Yes, sir.
That's something we can sort of look at. With that, I'll do that.
Thank you, Congressman Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me congratulate you on being here today. I know somewhere in some room in Washington you drew the short straw. And I do appreciate that. And I want to congratulate you on recognizing that there have been some problems and that you all are working on consistency. And your testimony here today is, I understand you're in a tight spot because you're trying to defend policies that you didn't necessarily make. At the same time, it's hard for you to say blanket statements, yes, I will fix this, when you may not have that authority to fix this or that. And I appreciate that. Now, understand, I'm coming up with some tough questions here in a minute.
Okay.
But I did want to get that out there because I think you've done a nice job with the difficult situation. And I also want to say that I think one of the problems that I hear about all the time that hasn't come up previously, which you are not an example of, is that apparently there are a lot of inspectors being hired who have limited or no experience in the mining industry, and then they're coming in after having either limited or no experience and becoming mine inspectors. And so I appreciate the fact that you did come from the industry, and I just make that a note that there's a lot of folks out there that get frustrated. Somebody that might have 6 months in a mine are suddenly mine inspectors, and after they go through a training class, they're out telling folks with experience like yours how to do the job that these folks have been doing very safely for a number of years. So I just make that as a comment. Now, these questions that I'm going to ask you are not directed at you personally, but they are tough questions, and I think we need answers to them. Do you know of, or do you have any reason to believe that there is an official quota system with the MSHA fine and citation process?
We've made it clear there is no quota system.
Is there any unofficial MSHA fine or citation system?
You say that. MSHA quota system again?
Yes, sir. This time I'm asking you, unofficial. First was official, no unofficial. Now, I'm going to bore down into this a little bit further because sometimes there can be no official or maybe not even a recognized unofficial system, but sometimes policies create a system, even if the people who are creating those policies don't intend to. A large police department somewhere in Virginia once created a system which they didn't really see as quotas at the time until the judge pointed it out to them that they created a quota system. And here's what they were doing. If you wrote more tickets, you got moved up the line to get the newest patrol car. And all the guys wanted the newest patrol car. So I want you to think about it and think about your answer. Is there any system where the people who get those, I saw that chart with the big spike, is there any system whereby if you're writing more citations that you're getting promotions? I know it wouldn't be new squad cars, but some kind of new equipment, newer car to drive. I mean, is there some kind of system that may not have intentionally been set up as a quota system, but which could have the possibilities of setting up a quota system because there are rewards to the inspectors for writing more citations?
None that I'm aware of, sir.
Can I ask you to go back and look and see if there are any systems whereby if you write more citations or you get more fine money in, Is that placed in your personnel jacket as to what your fines are and how many citations you write? And two, are there any side benefits to writing more citations that nobody's really thought about? I'm not accusing y'all of setting up a system intentionally, but that might intentionally have created a bonus or reward system, in essence, a quota system. Would you go back and check on that, and can you report back to this subcommittee on that?
Yes, sir.
I would greatly appreciate that. Again, did not mean that personally, but I've seen this happen sometimes unintentionally. Because when you look at the Mine Safety Act, and there can be a disagreement of whether you should or shouldn't write the citation, but when you see that chart, and I had not seen that chart before this morning, it's pretty telling that, from 1977 until whenever that spike was. Can we see that chart again, that graph that you had up there, Mr. Meadows? Oh, there we go. You get it on the screen. But it looks like somewhere between about 2005 and 2008, dealing with the same law, we had a major shift in policy. And so, if it isn't that there's some kind of an inadvertent bonus system, then there must have been a shift in the policies coming out of the administration of MSHA, and something that MSHA may want to take a look at, and we may want to take a look at. But you would agree that spike indicates that there must have been some kind of shift in policy.
There was a change in Part 100 in the assessment standards.
And who was responsible for that? That was MSHA's interpretation?
Yes, sir.
Through some regulations?
Yes, sir.
And just for the record, I don't believe you were with the agency at that time. Is that correct?
I started in 2008.
Okay. So you didn't have anything to do with that. And I appreciate that. Those were my concerns. I do appreciate the fact that you're after the consistency issue. I think it's more than just the guards. Anything that you can do in your position, having been in the industry, to make these things make more sense so that people feel comfortable. Everybody wants us to have mine safety. Everybody. We're all in agreement on that. And what the operators across the board are saying is, give us some consistency. Let us talk to you about the policies, which I think you indicated a day earlier too. Let us talk about the policies to make sure the policies make sense. And then let's have some consistent enforcement so that we are following the rules. If we're following what we think is a speed limit sign that says 35, and we're driving at 35, we're not being fined when we're driving at 35 because somebody tells us, well, it says 35, but we really meant 28. Can you do that for us and keep working on that?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that very much, and I appreciate this hearing, Mr. Chairman. I think it's extremely important that we've had this. Congressman, thank you for bringing us to your district, and I yield back.
Thank you. And I do want to again thank Congressman Meadows for bringing this to my attention, making it his priority, part of the subcommittee and our committee's priority. Again, these hearings are nice, but we do need to follow up. So we have a number of follow-up items. Is this the first time you testified before a committee of Congress?
Yes, sir.
Who's the administrator?
Neil Merrifield.
Is he, I guess he regularly testifies?
I don't know that he has either. He's normally the assistant secretary.
Okay. Well, we will also contact the committees of the legislative authorization jurisdiction, and I'm going to ask Mr. Meadows to kind of lead that effort. There's two ways we can tackle this effort. The thing that concerns, I think, everybody is that here's they sort of lost or feel they've lost discretion in the way these fines and all that applied, and then trying to get common sense back into play. A lot of money is collected in fines that actually exceeds your budget, but I would imagine those fines also cover coal.
Yes, I would guess.
But if you could get us that accurate information, we'll put it in the record, because I think that's important. But I think follow-up is key to making a change in a law that's 35 years old, has been cited as part of the problem, and then trying to make certain that the folks are treated fairly, have some, I don't know if there's due process in all of this, but just some process. And again, the goal is safety for workers in the workplace, which we would like to get fatalities to zero if that's at all humanly possible. We made some progress, but in the meantime, again, some over-regulation, overburden, we end up putting more and more jobs out of the United States and closing down industry and business and opportunity. So with that being said, again, we appreciate your coming forward today. We will follow up. Mr. Meadows, any closing comment?
No, just my thank you to you for coming. It is never fun to come. You knew when you came you were going to have to taste some medicine, and I appreciate your willingness to do that. I look forward to working with you to solve this issue. I believe that it is solvable. When we have really, I've heard testimony that what we want are safe minds. I've known Mr. McNeely, and the people that work for him are his family. I mean, some of them literally his family, but they're his family. And so I know that and that's what this is across the board. I see some of these guys and they're family members and they don't want to operate in an unsafe environment. So when we have two goals that want to have safe minds, let's work together to make sure that we don't put people out of businesses. And with that, I just want to say thank y'all, and I'll yield back to the chair.
With that, I thank the witnesses. I thank for those who came out today to join us. Particularly grateful to the community of Bakersville and also Mitchell County use of these historic facilities for this rather historic hearing. There being no further business before the Subcommittee on Government Operations, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.